Right, well, we explained earlier about this funny chain business, but people seem to be interested in the steady car. Obviously, this is Alex's job, but, you know, we can't help getting involved, obviously. And the first problem with this car was it had water in the oil. So we had to look at the oil water pump. And this is the bit that carries all this adjustment. But it also carries this, which is the impeller. And inside there is a gland that stops it sending its water into the oil. Now this thing here, somebody had machined this out and fitted this little carbon thrust. But quite a good thing, and we do this on brigade water pumps as it happens. But this bit has got no room. You can't alter it because obviously it's got to do the tension for the timing. So we now decided the only way out is to put it back to original, because also they blocked an oil hole up when they fitted this, and we thought, well, we can't expect all that to run dry. So anyway, John turned up this bush and we've silver soldered it in, and we've reinstated the oil holes, which is one there, so the oil goes in there, up there and out there. So we've reinstated all that. That all works lovely now. So what we've done is we've put the original seal type material in there so that it will seal on the pump. Now this is how it must have been originally, and the only way that can work, of course, is that eventually it's going to need servicing. So John has made up some tools so that the thing can be taken to pieces, because on the front of the engine there is a panel which you can undo and you can get in. But we've got the dead right stuff in there with molybdenum disulfide on and various things, so there's a good chance that it'll last 10,000 miles or 5,000 miles before it'll even need touching. And this car doesn't do a colossal mileage, so I think converting it back to original was the only thing we could do. So that's what we've done. So obviously when it needs servicing, you untake the thing, you put this in, you can unscrew that, and then you put that in there, and you unscrew that, you repack the seal, put that back in, tighten it up, put that back on there, and tighten that up. That goes on there, and then that goes in there. So we've decided that that could be the only way that Lancias did it. And my experience in all these years is usually the original way is the best way. So that's what we've done. So that's that. So this is the oil in the water, or water in the oil. So that's our solution there. Go back to original, I think that will work. So the next problem was, it leaked out the rear main badly. So we'll now walk over to the engine and I'll explain that. We're trying to decide what role I would be playing, because as it happens, this is Alex's job. So I'm either chief advisor, best boy, we don't really know. But when we watch the credits at the end of these things, it always makes me laugh. But anyway, regardless of that, what it is, we've taken this engine to bits, and the crankshaft, we could hardly turn it. So there's obviously something wrong. But one of the problems with it is that it leaks out of the rear main. And what it is that it's got what they call a scroll. And what it does is it winds the oil back into the engine. But that will only work if there's a very tight tolerance. And if it gets too big, well, obviously it is too big because it leaked out the rear main. So we're looking into that now, and one of the things we're going to do is check to see whether the crankshaft is straight, which will be another little bit of a video. And if it's not straight, we'll have to straighten it, and that'll be an interesting video. But anyway, so now we're looking at the sump, which obviously is half of what goes on there. And we didn't know whether the sump was flat. So we now go over to the service table. So as we took the engine to pieces, we took the pistons out, the crank was still tight. I mean, with no pistons in, you should be able to spin that crank, and it was nowhere near being able to spin. So first of all, we looked at the rear main, where the oil seal is, and it's been desperately touching against the crankshaft, and it's actually machined itself into this side. So that goes on there, and the crank seal is here, and it's a scroll, so it doesn't touch it. So that's bad. But then, so we took that off, and the crankshaft was still tight. So we thought, well, I don't know, we'll have to... So we loosened all the main bearings off, and we took the crank out. And we thought, well, the first job we'd have to do is to make sure the crankshaft's straight. Because there's no good of trying to fit that and scrape it and do all the things that you could do to make it nice if the crankshaft's bent. So anyway, we've now put the crank in the lathe, and Alex is going to check the crank to see whether it's straight. And we might as well go over there and we can see just what he's doing. So we've set the crank up in the lathe, and we put the clock gauge on it, and we're checking to see whether the crank's straight. And it's pretty good. I mean, it ain't perfect because it's a bloody old car, but it's all right. So we decided that that's good enough. So the next step will be to fit the crankshaft to the bearings nicely and make it turn nicely. But the other problem is that we looked at the sump, and when we took the sump off, which is another good thing, another tip, when you're taking an engine to bits, you look at everything very carefully. And we looked at the surface of the sump, and it had got gasket goo on it, and there was actually a fingerprint still in the gasket goo. So it obviously wasn't touching where the rear main goes together. So then we thought, well, let's have a look at the sump. So then we put some abrasive on the surface table, and we rubbed the sump. And the sump is flat, there's nothing wrong with that. So now it's all down to the seal on the rear main. Obviously, when you put the crankshaft in, you've got the flange for the flywheel, so you can't get a feeler gauge in, you can't do anything. So it's very difficult to know what you're doing there. So what we've done, we've made a dummy mine drawer to put in the rear main, like that. And that is the same size as the scroll on the crankshaft. So now we'll probably weld that up actually. We'll probably weld that up, put it on the milling machine. We don't know yet, we might have to make a new one. Because the other half is in the sump and it's not like this. But anyway, so now when you put that on there, we will actually be able to see the clearance and make that a proper job. Because those scrolls, they leak. It's going to leak anyway, but it ain't going to pour out. Exactly the same on a Bugatti Type 57, but we made a special seal up in the end, so when Tim does those cars, he's got a special seal and they don't leak. In fact, it's quite a funny story really. The first Type 57 that I restored, we did everything as carefully as we could. David Hyman was the man, and he was a fabulous customer. So we'd done it all, and we took it to Prescott, and it's all lovely, and it all looked good and everything, and it was standing there. And there was a leak from the rear main, because obviously at that stage we hadn't cracked making the seal, a modern seal. And so he said to me, oh, Ivan, he said, it's leaking. I said, yes, David, yeah, that's not very good. But luckily there was an old boy who was obviously a very serious Prescott Bugatti Owners Club man, and he had that thing with like the Prescott badge and all the gears hanging down like that. And he looked, and he was standing there, and he was overhearing the conversation, and he said, oh, well, old boy, he said, it wouldn't be a Bugatti if it didn't leak oil. I tell you what, I was so pleased he was there. So David and I just forgot about it after that, and that was it. But obviously we knew that this was going to give a problem. So on the Bugattis, we developed a seal that goes in there, and they don't leak now. But we're not going to do that on this, because it's, again, Lancia don't leave you any room. So we think what we're going to do is obviously make a really good job of the original thing. And if it has the odd very slightly, no one's going to complain about that. But it wasn't that very slightly, it was pouring out. So really that's up to date really. So the next thing will be fitting the crankshaft, getting it to spin, sorting out the rear main seal, and that's it. And then obviously we'll start on the conrods, because another problem with this car is, which I always tell everybody, when they're doing engines. When you've got it together, you've got to be able to look down there and see a bit of gudgeon pin. A millimetre's nice shiny bit of gudgeon pin each side of the piston. This car had gap one side and nothing the other side. So obviously when it heats up, it could so easily be thrusted on the pistons. And when you look at the pistons, they've been thrusted. So that's another problem with this engine that we'll overcome. So that's it. We haven't started on the cylinder head yet, but so old Alex is learning heaps and bounds here, and you know, I don't mind telling him, and it's me and John, we're only here to mess about with my cars. We don't do cars for people, but it's turning into an interesting job, and it seems that quite a lot of people are interested in seeing it on the old YouTube, so it gives old Talia something to do. Right, so now this is the diameter that is near that scroll that is very important. Well, obviously we didn't know whether the sump was particularly flat, so we decided to rub the sump on our lovely surface table. Now you may say, how has he managed to have that lovely surface table? Well, I didn't buy it. The local college up the road that did, I think it was an agricultural course that they did, they rang me up one day and they said, we're closing down the course, would you like a surface table? Well, you don't say no to that. So anyway, I went to the local college with my trailer and we managed to load this on, and that is how I got this surface table. So I didn't actually spend any money, I was given it really. Mind you, the tyres on the trailer were almost red hot when we got here, but that's neither here nor there, so it's been very useful. So what we do, we spray the surface table, spray the back of these, which are 180, no, 80 grit. No, 40. 40 grit. So we spray the table, get them on there, and then, you see, the surface of this sump could not be all over the place, and the fact that that there runs on the seal, it won't do any harm to rub just a little bit off of there, because it'll improve it. But that's the next step, we'll have to check all that. But anyway, so this is what we do. We plonk it on there, we'll give it a rub. And then we can check to make sure it's nice and flat, and it's not that bad, so that's quite good. But we wouldn't have known that. I mean, obviously we could have put it on the surface table and messed about, but I find this works like a charm. So that's that. The next thing we're going to do is to check whether the crankshaft is straight, because it was stiff, and it's no good of scraping the bearings and making it spin round if it's not straight, because obviously you're going to take a load out of a bearing that we don't particularly want. So what we've decided to do is we're going to put the crankshaft in the lathe, clock it up and see whether it's straight. So that's another little bit of the video we'll make probably after tea or sometime. But anyway, that's enough for now. No. It's good having a nice young strong boy to do the job. Well, I think it's touching. It's there, isn't it? Yeah, give it a wipe off the seat. Well, I'm sure that I'm not telling anybody about this because everybody in the world knows about Plastigauge, because I can remember reading it in the 750 bulletin when I was about, I don't know, 16. But this is Plastigauge, which is like a little bit of plastic, and you put it on the bearing. Long ways. And you put the crankshaft on it and you tighten it up, and then in here, the Plastigauge kit, you've got a thing like this, and what you do, you take the Plastigauge out. Well, you look at the Plastigauge because it has been squeezed together, so instead of being round it goes flat, and then you can hold that against a piece of stuff and you can tell how much clearance there is inside the bearing. So it's a very, very clever thing. And when you haven't got any real equipment and you're in a shed, it's not a bad thing to have. I mean, these days they've got all sorts of clever stuff, but, you know, listen, that works like a charm. You can do it in one hand, good. Right, that's it. So now we put the mains on. And then we put the mains on, do exactly the same thing. Put the Plastigauge. Normally you'd only do this on one side. But because this has got all sorts of problems and we're looking for clues, we're going to put it on both sides. Well, according to that, it's about 2,500. It's certainly 2,000, which is what you want. You want 2,000 clearance on that.